Hello everyone and welcome to Tuesday Trading, a trader for traders. I'm delighted to see you again. Today we've got a very high tension day ahead of us. The schedule's absolutely packed. Wall Street has just chalked up its third consecutive session in the red. I told you when I left you, I said I thought it would bounce back. It went up by 25% and when I come back, I'll tell you, in my opinion, that's it, I'm here. It could go down and that's exactly what it's done. You see, perfect timing. You could have paid your retirement pension just on my timing, on last month's Tuesday trading. So, why all this tension? Because in particular, we've got the US 30-year, which nearly hit 5.19% yesterday, a 19-year high. There you go, doesn't get any higher than that. And above all, tonight at 10 PM when the bell closes, we've got Nvidia releasing its results. It's really the moment of truth for AI. Everyone is certain they'll deliver, and I'll talk to you about it at the end of Good Morning Trading. Quickly, a roundup of the markets. Asia is down across Japan, China and Australia. It's fallen due to concerns, particularly about the very high rates in the United States. The problem also lies in the Strait of Hormuz, but broadly speaking, at the moment, the real shock isn't the Strait of Hormuz. It's not Brent crude around $110, nor WTI around $103. It's really the issue with bonds. The 10-year has risen to 4.69%, also its highest since January 2025. So when the cost of money climbs to these levels, it weakens absolutely the entire ecosystem, and notably that of artificial intelligence. I spoke to you about this yesterday, so I won't go over it again now. The second impact. If you look closely, when rates rise, that is to say, as an investor, if you have $100,000 spare, you invest them. These are rates that are, so to speak, in inverted commas, guaranteed. You now earn between 4.69% and over 5%, and there's a knock-on effect. What is this knock-on effect? It's that Bitcoin struggles to rise. Bitcoin is quiet, and you'll notice this, very few people have seen it or studied it seriously. When rates go up, Bitcoin stagnates or falls. Why? Because Bitcoin is, if I dare say in inverted commas, an investment for when you have too much money to invest. Like, oh, I've got far too much cash, I'm not going to buy another position in Nvidia, I'm not going to take one in Microsoft, I've got Dow Jones, Grand, F, etc. Well, in the end, this $100,000, what do I do with it? Right, I'll take a small position in Bitcoin or in Ethereum. It's not gambling, but in a way, it's an investment. As a last resort, when you've got a bit too much money sitting in your account, well, now that you've got a bit too much money in your account, you can just invest it at over 5%, nice and easy, basically risk-free, without the volatility of Bitcoin, that plus 20, minus 20%. So you might not be able to show off as much at dinner parties when you say, I've invested my money in dividends at 5.63%. It doesn't exactly make anyone dream. But if you say, I've put $100,000 into Bitcoin, well, that livens up the evening, doesn't it? And the very next day, if Bitcoin's lost 15%, believe me, your friends are pleased, that's for sure. So, for those who are into Bitcoin, keep an eye on US rates, the price of Bitcoin, have a look around a bit. Now, today's topic is Nvidia. This evening, I'll move on to technical analysis. It's the earnings release that the entire financial world has been waiting for. At 10 PM, Nvidia will publish its first quarter results. The consensus is expecting a bumper profit per share of $1.76. I hope you've got a few thousand of those, for a turnover of $19 billion, which was a turnover of $44 billion a year earlier. That means they're anticipating that almost 80% of turnover is now with Nvidia. Nvidia are the ones who completely dominate the ecosystem. So there are three things to keep an eye on in Nvidia's results. Their technological transition, I'm not going to go into detail, but basically they're moving from Blackwell technology to Vera Rubin technology. What does that mean? It's more powerful, cheaper to produce, and uses less energy. To give you an idea, it's a bit like the atomic bomb and the hydrogen bomb. The atomic bomb is effective, but it uses a huge amount of energy and causes massive destruction. The hydrogen bomb is more elegant. It kills humans first and foremost and causes little destruction to infrastructure, bridges, means of transport, that sort of thing. The roads are still more or less intact. It's only living things that are dead. So it's a bomb that's a bit more aristocratic, a bit more efficient. Well, that's exactly what Nvidia's good at. They're moving from the atomic bomb to the hydrogen bomb. Their model's more powerful, much more efficient and, in inverted commas, much cleaner, uses a bit less energy. I'll quickly run through today's agenda and then we'll move on to the technical analysis. So today, 4:30 p.m. US oil stock figures. If you trade WTI, that's extremely important. And it's been particularly closely watched since the tensions with Iran. If there are stocks, they need to have enough in reserve. That's what will reassure investors. If stocks are really low in the United States, it will cause some concern and push up the price, especially for WTI. Let me remind you, all things considered, that the United States is completely energy independent if it chooses to be. They're currently reopening oil wells in Texas, as I mentioned to you before. As soon as the price of oil is above $100, they open wells in Texas because it's worth the cost to produce them. And when it's below $80, they shut their wells. They could make money, but they even offer incentives so that oil well owners don't exploit them. So the lads, they shut their wells, they get money from the American government. It's brilliant. Why? Because the long-term goal of the United States, we often say that politicians only think 4 years ahead, but in the United States of America, they're thinking 50, 100, 150, 200 years ahead when it comes to oil. That's what they want. When oil is cheap, they shut their wells to buy as much oil as possible from all the foreign countries that produce it. Why does that gradually reduce their reserves? So that the last drop of petrol can power an American plane or an American tank? That's how you can win the war. Because an American plane with solar panels, a bomber with solar panels, we're not there yet. We're really not there yet. So we've got a truly explosive mix on our hands. Today, the bond market, which calls the shots with a 30-year at over 5.19%, oil, which is structurally high but still just about acceptable, and above all, Nvidia at 10 p.m. So, what does that mean for us? For us, it was a session where you have to be extremely cautious, especially, I'm looking at the Nasdaq, because it's likely to move quite a lot, especially in the last hour. Don't hang around because there are people taking bets, there are people who are scared, and that causes a fair bit of unloading, a fair bit of unloading, a fair bit of unloading. Let's move on to technical analysis. You'll see the levels were magnificently respected. And oh, I forgot to mention, I'm very proud, and I'm one of the very few private individuals worldwide to be a member of both the CME and the CBOE in Chicago, the two biggest. Thank you. Global Stock Exchange. With voting rights, I received something like that to vote for the executives and so on. There must be fewer than 200 of us in the world at most, because the CME selection process takes 6 months, and it's, well, very difficult to get in. We must make up 1% private individuals, and 99% are all the banks, all the funds, BlackRock and so on. Still pretty cool to think that I have a vote, just like Societe Generale, BlackRock, Citi, all of them. It's funny, really. So now I'm going to vote. It's happening right now for some blokes I don't even know. But it doesn't matter. After all, that's more or less how it goes. That's the principle of voting. Voting for people you don't know. Don't tell me you've had dinner with politicians recently. I wouldn't believe you. So you don't know them, you just have an impression. But it's not, it's just because they're... Anyway, let's get started then. Technical analysis, no waffle. I mentioned the Nasdaq to you, saying yesterday that we might go and hit the monthly support. Look, we went past it, touched it, and then bounced back up sharply. Tough luck. That was at 4 in the morning. And yes, what do you mean you were asleep? Serious mistake. I was asleep too, I didn't see it happen. It's a shame, but what's interesting is, if we come back to it during the session, it worked really well. So last night, we've got a new one. It's possibility here, look, it's not exactly rocket science. The low point on 12th May was here. We hit the low point again, went a little bit below it. The weekly support helped to limit the drop, and that gave us a springboard. Well, all things considered, that's still 300 points, so with a small lot, that was $6,000 to be made just from that move. Now if you'd put in 10 lots, you'd be at $60,000, and life's looking pretty good. That's a good trading day for me. What interests me is the monthly resistance. Right now we're a bit above it, but you can see we're really pressed up against the monthly resistance. The middle, Series 1W. So here I'm going to be rather cautious. That's what interests me. It would be if we drop below 28,900, below the monthly resistance. If we get some re-entries, it would be brilliant if we had a range like that. So buying below and selling again near or just above the monthly resistance. That would be much, much easier there. At first glance, when you see this, it feels like they want to take off straight north. Let's not take any risks, let's not take any chances. There are the 29,000s that could act as a barrier, and there's the middle S11. There you go, let's be wary of the Europeans' enthusiasm, an opening which often falls back when you look at it. We'll see it straight away, the CAC 40. So yesterday they gained 1% in a straight line, and then they ended up in the red at minus 0.08 for the CAC 40. If I remember rightly, they lost everything they'd gained in the morning. So be careful of the Europeans' exuberance. In the morning it falls back, it often finishes lower, it falls back, it often drops quickly. We're below 8,000. That's the nice target for the CAC 40. It would be to stay in touch with the highs, but apparently they're not managing it. So here we've got more of a certain outlook. We're going to look for 7,900, or even the lowest point from last week. There's also the middle, which is a monthly level, again an area where the decline might slow down a bit. Now, if there's a surprise bombing or a problem today, of course that won't hold there. This is pure technical analysis for the DAX, a slight pullback. But did you see? It still looks pretty good compared to the CAC 40. There, the CAC 40 looks a bit like a dead rat, while the DAX 40 is more like a healthy dog. It's doing all right, it's going along. In any case, it's stabilising. It's holding steady right around 24,300, its weekly resistance level. We've got the 200 and the 250 levels below, which could trigger a rebound wave if we drop down to them, like we saw last night at 4 in the morning. So we're really not at all in the same scenario as the CAC 40. When you look at the DAX, if you want to buy a European stock, it's more about the DAX. Technically, graphically, and if you want to sell a European stock, you stick with a CAC 40. As for the Dow Jones, be careful, it's coming down to its... We're at the lowest point of last week. We haven't seen a very strong rebound. There's no sense of wild enthusiasm here. They're more in a holding pattern. Why are they in a holding pattern? Because of Nvidia. And you'll say to me, but what's the connection? We've got Nvidia at 10 o'clock tonight, the Dow Jones. It doesn't have Nvidia in it, true, but there's competition between where the money goes. If I may say so, if Nvidia disappoints, if Nvidia posts results that drag the Dow Jones down, if there's major doubt about AI, bang, the Dow Jones will benefit. And people, rather than buy Nvidia, will buy Walmart and so on. By the way, we'll have Walmart's results tomorrow, so there you go, the Dow Jones. If I may say so, it's not exactly the flagship index. It's the slightly more conservative index, a bit more for protecting your portfolio. So, well, it's waiting to see whether we're heading for another AI craze with Nvidia, or if Nvidia disappoints. The Dow Jones benefits from it, so at the moment it's normal that it's in a waiting phase. The Nasdaq, as we've just seen, is a bit febrile. It might want to go up. Now, if Nvidia's results are better than expected, we'll find ourselves right at the top end of the spectrum. If it disappoints, we could drop, because just look, we've already had an increase of over 25%. Now, Nvidia, they do have a few problems. In particular, what will be closely watched are the forecasts they give for the next quarter. especially whether they're having supply issues, notably with DRAM. The factories are running at full capacity. For example, we've got CBOT, who told us that when it comes to storage interfaces, they're producing at full tilt, but they can't just build new factories at the drop of a hat. So that means there's a huge demand for hardware linked to AI. If the manufacturers can't produce quickly enough, it'll push costs up. Do you want me hard drives? Ah, well, yes, I can get them to you in a fortnight. If you want them sooner, you'll have to pay more. So there's this tension as well, and that's something that's going to be closely watched. If you can expand, that's brilliant. But you still need to actually have, how shall I put it, the equipment to do so. Let me explain this to you a little bit more. Just a little bit. A bit more in detail. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have a restaurant. You can seat 200 people. Your restaurant's always full. You can have 200, 250 people. There's no problem. You've got the space, you've got the potential, you've got the chef, you've got the team. Brilliant. But you need tables. The only problem is that at the moment, you're only able to seat 120 people. You want to seat more, 250, so you order more tables. And then the table supplier tells you, I'm completely full up. I can't deliver your tables for another 3 or 4 months. So in fact, that's going to slow down your growth. Or you try to pull a fast one, which is well known. You change your concept and have people eat standing up. And that's what's called a tapas bar. That way, you need fewer staff. People go and get their own tapas at the bar. There's less cleaning up. You don't need tablecloths and so on. You work out the price of your tapas at the end, and it ends up costing more than if you'd eaten sitting down in a restaurant. So you can turn it into a bit of a scam. Tapas bars. I've never understood them. It's paying a fortune to eat standing up. Personally, I want to be seated with a nice tablecloth. There you have it, a lovely Nant setting, tapas bars at both ends, and outside, blokes blowing smoke in your face. Honestly, it needs to stop a bit. There you go, that was the anti-tapas minute. Anyway, one less anti-tapas bar for you. Seriously, what I'm telling you is actually extremely serious. You see, that's Nvidia's problem. They can expand, but they need memory, they need tables, they need chairs. And the table suppliers and the chair suppliers, well, they tell Nvidia, we're flat out, can't go any faster, so as a result it slows things down. Nvidia's development. These are the sorts of problems that are nice to have, because things are still happening. Pretty well, actually. Back to technical analysis, we've covered the Nasdaq 500. Right, I tell you, it's much of a muchness between them. Let's save some time for gold and, well, things still aren't going well at all. Well, as I told you yesterday, it wasn't great, and that's still the case. Careful now, we're starting to see a downward trend line forming, which is sharp and very pronounced. There you have it then. We've been bombarded for months and months with claims that gold was the asset of the 21st century, but honestly, the Nasdaq has gone up by 25%, and in the meantime, gold has lost just as much. There you are, it's as simple as that, really. So, compared to its highs, it's lost 25%. I hope you sold out Janine's jewellery. Now, as for Bitcoin, it's at its lowest point. Indeed, interest rates are rising. Look, rates go up, boom, a collapse, well, a collapse. Still, a drop in Bitcoin of about 5 to 6%. So keep a close eye on everything. And then, the good news is that you're going to pay even more for your petrol. And that's very good news if you're an environmentalist, because the French and Europeans, generally speaking, have reduced their petrol consumption by 15 to 20%, and that's really good. People walked, more people postponed certain journeys. Totally unnecessary, probably referring to journeys that were pointless. They would have made them anyway, they would have done them, so it's better for the planet, and so on, and so on, and so on. There you are, the environmentalists are happy. In fact, I think some of them even dream of a barrel at $300. That way, we'll do everything on foot and we'll be more or less back in the year 1000. That'd be brilliant. And then we could cut off the electricity as well, which would be even better. There you go. Long live our dog friends. On that note, I finished telling you nonsense that aren't really nonsense, but aren't quite true either. Don't forget, it would be really lovely if you could sign up and interact. I read all your comments, and do talk about this show to your friends. It's the only way for it to become known. I don't advertise, I don't pay anything at all. I'm old school. I believe that quality eventually pays off, even if it's better to just say any old thing. That actually attracts far more people in our society. But I still have a little bit of hope. Not everyone is on TikTok yet. With that, I send you my best. Take care of yourselves. All the best to you. And in 10 minutes, for those from my school, we're doing a live for everyone.